What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Happy Friday, little Steelers-Colts preview. I'm recording this about 24 hours before kickoff. Steelers-Colts in Indianapolis. Steelers are currently the 6th seed, Colts the 7th seed in the AFC playoff picture. This one's going to matter a ton in terms of positioning, who's going to be able to make the dance, all that good stuff. It should be a really good game. I think the spread's pretty close. Two teams that, in my opinion, just on paper are fairly evenly matched. It should be a good one. But just before we get into previewing the Colts, offense, defense, all that good stuff, how this game could potentially play out. Per usual, we'll go over some injury stuff to start off with. For the Steelers, thankfully, the back-to-back losses to two-win teams are pretty ugly, but they did have a little extra time to get healthy. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, both clear concussion protocol. That's obviously very good news, significant news. Heading into this weekend, both those guys are going to play. Really, the only thing from an injury perspective, obviously Kenny Pickett's still out, but the only thing to monitor going into tomorrow is going to be Isaac Seumalo dealing with a shoulder injury. Steelers left guard has not practiced all week. He didn't practice some of last week, had an injury designation, I believe, as well, but still ended up playing. So Seumalo is a vet. He may not need to necessarily get out there and practice in order to suit up. If he doesn't play, obviously a significant loss along the offensive line. It'll probably be Herbig stepping in for him. Definitely something to monitor when they announce the inactives, shortly before the kickoff. For the Colts, fairly healthy for them as well. Really, the big name that's going to miss is Jonathan Taylor. Of course, Taylor missed the first 5-6 weeks of the season or whatever it was this year for the Colts. But he's out now with a thumb injury. That was a recent thing that happened a couple of weeks ago. Zach Moss has been the guy that's kind of been carrying the load really for the Colts all season. And then really the other significant injury that they're dealing with is going to be their right tackle, Braden Smith. Smith's a solid right tackle, starting caliber player, but he's going to miss this one with a knee injury. It's going to be rookie out of BYU, Blake Freeland, stepping in at right tackle. We'll talk a little bit about him when we get into the Colts offense. So fairly healthy for both teams, which I think is always a good thing. Of course, it's worth noting that we have yet another game where we're going to see a battle of the backup quarterbacks. That's been a theme for the Steelers this season, really a theme across the league. There's just not a lot of healthy starting quarterbacks left. But let's talk a little bit about the Colts offense. Honestly, Shane Steichen coming over from the Eagles, getting that head coaching job. I think that he's done a pretty awesome job, to be honest with you, just in terms of, guiding the ship in Indy. Indianapolis is a team in general that I think has been punching above their weight, per se, in terms of just, I think they have obviously some talent on both sides of the ball, but for them to be this competitive with Gardner Minshew really at quarterback all season long has been pretty impressive. You just look at some of the numbers. Indy likes to play, high scoring games. They've been in a lot of closely contested games. Prior to last week, they got, shelled by the Bengals. But they're 18th in EPA per play, 20th in success rate. Modest numbers, but even without Jonathan Taylor, they've had some impressive moments rushing the football. They're really about middle of the pack pretty much everywhere that you really look in terms of offense. Just in terms of understanding what Steichen's offense kind of about, it's really like spread and shred. They love to get in the gun. They're in the shotgun 93% of the time. So that's definitely one of the reasons I thought Anthony Richardson was going to be a good fit because, he has some similarities with Jalen Hurts. But even with Minshew, kind of being behind under center, they've heavy shotgun. They run a lot of tempo. So this is a team that doesn't, take the play clock all the way down to 0 every play. They'll use some no huddle stuff. It's a fairly stagnant offense. They don't use a ton of motion, but they still, even though they're a shotgun heavy team, they do a lot of play action. Even beyond play action, Steichen loves to use RPOs. So if you've ever watched Minshew, you know that he can be a little chaotic. We'll talk about him, but the RPO, the quick game aspect of Steichen's offense is, I think, a nice guardrail for what they like to do. If you guys have watched the Miami Dolphins, I'm sure you have, the Miami Dolphins RPO where they have, the slant wheel and then the flat RPO for the quarterback. The Colts love spamming that, especially on early downs, just to get them, ahead of schedule per se. But Minshew, he's a guy who has a splash of creation ability. He loves to play off script. He will avoid, guys in the pocket, look to scramble, make plays down the field. He is a wild card, in my opinion. He's a little bit like Trubisky in the fact that, really all outcomes are on the table at all times. I mean, you could get a really exciting play that looks awesome, or you could get just like a catastrophic turnover at any given time throughout the course of the game. But really, he has done a decent job, helping keep them afloat. This is an offense that does have talent, on the perimeter. Michael Pittman's had a fantastic season this year. I think he's top 3 in targets overall. They love to feed him, especially on crossers, digs, slants. He is near the top of the league in slant or receptions on slants, yards on slants, first downs. That's kind of one of the ways that they like to keep the offense on schedule. So I anticipate Joey Porter Jr. following him around. They will move him around both sides, a little bit in the slot, things like that. But that's going to be a really good matchup, one that's going to potentially determine the outcome of this one. In terms of the other weapons, Josh Downs, rookie out of North Carolina, I coined him as like an and one freestyle or and one mixtape freestyle route runner coming out of North Carolina. He's a guy who knows how to get open, particularly in the underneath areas of the field. They have used him down the field a little bit as well to stretch it vertically, but he hasn't been as active here in recent weeks. And then the other receiver that they kind of use is Alec Pierce, strictly a vertical threat. He's like a traditional Z. He runs a lot of just fade balls, the clear out guy on a lot of their route concepts. Has had some big games, but overall, like fairly quiet throughout the course of the season, just in terms of a yards per route run perspective. They play a lot of tight ends. Like I said, they do play majority 11 personnel. They'll mix in a little bit of 12. But one thing that's really interesting is they have like 3 or 4 different tight ends that they rotate in, all of which have various different skill sets. Probably the one that I look at the most is Kylan Granson. If you look at their game against the Titans a couple weeks ago, had a couple plays down the field, back shoulder, play on a wheel route. We know how much the Steelers have struggled, particularly against tight ends in recent weeks. That's definitely something that, the Cardinals and the Patriots both exploited, getting those Steelers linebackers matched up on tight ends and, throwing the ball to them. So that's definitely something to watch for. They don't throw the ball to the tight end a ton. But again, this is something that is now on film. So until the Steelers prove that they can stop that aspect of the offense, I think opposing offensive coordinators are going to continue to lean into it. So rushing the ball, Zach Moss had a really good season. Moss was the guy that I really liked coming out of college. Honestly, I didn't think that he would ever have a season quite like this. He's been pretty solid. So even without Jonathan Taylor being banged up all season long, he's done a really good job stepping in. Moss is a guy that's really difficult to get on the ground. He runs behind his pads, good center of gravity, really good contact balance. He's a guy that you got to get on the turf. Make sure you get a lot of hats to the football. They will lean on him to carry the load. They got some other guys like Trey Sermon backing him up, but really the Colts, even without Taylor, have trusted him to carry like a heavy workload, and he's responded fairly well to that. So the Colts offensive line, we already mentioned Blake Freeland stepping in at right tackle. That's going to be a really key matchup. Freeland is an excellent athlete, but he is a rookie right tackle going up against, one of the best pass rushers, if not the best pass rusher in all of football, and TJ Watt. So that's definitely a matchup that is worth noting. Left guard, Quentin Nelson, still playing at a really high level. If you watched the Colts Steelers game last year, him and Cam Hayward had a fun back and forth. Their left tackle, Bernard Raymond, another really young guy, has another really good athlete too, has stepped in, and he's had a really nice, I believe it's his second year, really nice sophomore season in terms of protecting Minshew's blind side. This is a quality, decent offensive line overall, which is a step up from where they were last season. So in case you haven't caught on to the theme, this Colts team under Chris Ballard, they love their athletes. So if you just look around their team, they have a lot of big, fast athletes. And that's really just how Ballard prefers to build his roster. Just kind of moving on to a little bit of the defense side of the ball. Gus Bradley is their defensive coordinator. Bradley's been around a really long time. You guys will probably remember him from his days with the early 2010 Seahawks, the Legion of Boom era. Bradley has stuck to those roots. He has covered 3 through and through. But, the Colts, even without a ton of what I would classify as, household names. They are about average in terms of just around the pack. They're 16th in EPA per play, 22nd, I believe, in success rate overall. They've struggled against the ground, but they've had some injuries up front. This is a quality defensive line and trenches when everybody's healthy. Of course, DeForest Buckner, been one of the more productive guys, I feel like, around the league in terms of at the defensive tackle position, former San Francisco guy. I think he's got 14 quarterback hits on the season. He's equally effective against the run as he is rushing the passer. Really disruptive, likes to get up the field. Excellent length, which he uses to his advantage. His running mate is actually, this is a 4-3 team. His running mate, Grover Stewart, coming back from injury. Grover Stewart's been a really good run defender for a little bit now, but he's missed some time this season with an injury. Having him back in the lineup is going to be interesting to see how, if they can improve on, some of those struggles that they've had on that side of the ball. So far this season without him, largely they've been 30th in rushing success rate. So that's something that the Steelers are obviously going to try to exploit because they want to run the football. The Colts have struggled, getting guys, ball carriers on the ground. Was really impressed when I was watching the film just with the Colts edge rushers. Especially Samson Ebicam. That's a guy who I've thought has been underrated for quite some time. He's a guy who drafted by the Rams, went to the Niners, worked with defensive line coach Chris Kasurik, one of the best in the game in terms of position coaches. But Ebicam, guy who can really get off the rock, explosive, really good hand usage, can turn the corner. If you guys want kind of a preview on just how good or impressive this kid has been this year, he's got a career high in sacks. He's trending that way in career high in pressures as well. But Ebicam, had a strip sack on Baker Mayfield when they played the Bucs a couple weeks ago. Tristan Wirfs, their left tackle, is an all-pro, one of the best in the business, and I thought Ebicam really took it to him a little bit. On the other side, you got Kwity Paye. They have some other rotational rushers too, but Kwity Paye, another freakish athlete, guy out of Michigan. Been around the league a couple years now, but he's really coming into his own. Another guy who can really get off the rock, can go speed to power a little bit. These Colts edge rushers, they are fourth in sack percentage. I think they're 12th in pressure rate overall. So they can get after you a little bit as in terms of rushing the passer, which is a good thing, and it's almost required for Gus Bradley's defense because Bradley does not blitz at all. So they are 30th in blitz rate. They've only blitzed on 85 snaps this season. So he's a guy who really relies on his four-man rush. They use that about 80% of the time. And then just kind of on the back end, I wrote something for SteelersNow.com, which I will put in the description. But I wrote about, Gus Bradley, that cover 3 defense that the Legion of Boom era used. He's still using that in terms of in 2023, which a lot of, even though cover 3 is still widely popular, the most popular coverage in the league, other teams have kind of moved away from it a little bit. Bradley has not. This is a really well-coached unit. They play zone coverage the most of any team in the NFL. And man coverage rates, they've only used man coverage on 10% of their snaps this year. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of cover 3. They will mix in some split safety stuff, some cover 2, cover 4, cover 6 stuff as well. But they play cover 3, I think, on like 58% of their snaps. So it's a very static defense. You pretty much know what you are getting. Bradley does do a good job when he does decide to blitz, which is only usually a handful of times a game of, designing those up. They're one of the more effective blitz teams, even though they don't do it very often. So at the linebacker spot, Zaire Franklin, it's interesting because both Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, both guys that, former special teams guys, unheralded guys that have kind of worked their way up to playing every down for them. They've pretty much made Darius Leonard expendable, guy who's a fan favorite there for the Colts for quite a while. Franklin's a tackling machine, likes to play downhill, good run defender. Speed is a little bit different. He fits the name description, really good athlete. I think he's a former receiver, actually, coming into college. Guy who likes to run and chase. They'll use him a little bit in coverage situations. One thing that I did note in my matchups article for Steelers Now was that the Colts have been throttled by running backs in the passing game. You just look at last week against the Bengals. I think the Bengals had like 115, 120 receiving yards from their backs. Chase Brown, backup running back, took a screen to the house. I think it was like 55 yards. So look for maybe Jaylen Warren to maybe get involved a little bit out of the backfield, create some easy completions for Trubisky, and see if they can take care of some of those matchups. In the secondary, they're really young on the outside, just in terms of at the corner spot. Juju Brents, guy from Kansas State, guy that the Steelers met with extensively in the offseason at the Combine, Senior Bowl, all that stuff. He is going to be back in the lineup this week. He's missed the last month and a half. We'll see how much if he starts. Jalen Jones, another rookie corner that they've been relying on. Both these guys, bigger, longer corners, can run a little bit as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the rotation is on the outside. But like I said, a lot of cover three. You're going to have some single matchups, some one-on-ones on the outside, and that's one of the best ways to beat cover three coverage. Is just understanding that those guys aren't going to have safety help over the top, and take your one-on-ones. So Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, going to need a good game from those guys. But at the safety position, Julian Blackman, Rodney Thomas, both those guys are really solid on the back end, very fundamentally sound, keep guys in front. Blackman is more of the guy that they like to roll down into the box. And then, Kenny Moore is our slot corner. He's been around forever now. But Moore is a really, I would say, a very, very versatile guy, equally adept at playing the run. He's smart in coverage, really good zone defender. He's a guy that you got to watch in terms of, where your eyes go. But this Colts team, they've, been really, really solid. Like I said, they've been feisty. Another thing, too, is their defense has scored several times this season. I think 3 or 4 or 5 touchdowns or something like that. So really Trubisky being able to kind of toe that line between aggressiveness and recklessness is going to be really important. You watch the Patriots game, that one turnover that led to a touchdown. This is a team that needs to play with a positive game script. Need to try to keep this one close and avoid a shootout if all possible, because that's really the way that the Colts like to play. They would prefer that this get up to the high 20s or low 30s. And the Steelers, they do not like to play that way. So going to be really interesting. Like I said, I think the spread is 1.5 points. I do think that the Steelers get back in the win column. I think it'll be an ugly game, but when I was watching the film, I just think that Minshew's the type of quarterback that, traditionally speaking, the Steelers defense can kind of feast on a little bit, just with some of his chaotic tendencies to put the ball on the ground, to take sacks, maybe put the ball in harm's way. So I'm kind of banking on the Steelers getting a couple turnovers, and being able to, ugly this thing up. Come away with a win on the road. And that's really all that matters. Like I mentioned, if the Steelers win this game, I think their playoff odds go to about 50%. If they lose it, it goes down to about 10. So this is really I describe this as a loser leaves town type of matchup. Whoever loses this game is their playoff odds are going to be pretty much on life support. And if they win, obviously you're still going to be in the playoff hunt. So it's pretty much do or die now for this Steelers team. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Let me know y'all predictions of the game, anything that y'all are looking forward to seeing. And as always, on your way out, just please make sure that you like the video, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. And I will check you guys tomorrow night after the game.